works. Guys, we're gonna begin and ask Mike to lead a prayer for us and grab a seat.
All right, let's pray. Our dear gracious and sovereign Lord, we thank you so much for the opportunity to come together and spend time in your Word, spend time in worship to you, fellowship with one another. We ask your blessings on our time in class and our time in worship, our fellowship together, that it will be encouraging, uplifting, and strengthen us in our walk with you. We thank you most of all for your love and your compassion shown toward us, and forgive us of sins that we have through Jesus. We pray.
Many of you have heard this expression. You can choose your actions, but you cannot choose the consequences of your actions. Anybody else heard that? You choose your actions, but you cannot choose the consequences of your actions. In this section of David's life, we're basically looking at the consequence. Well, not so much the consequences, but the choices that David has to make. Some difficult choices. Another question might be, how do others in your life try to enforce society's behavior on you? You can be specific if you want to. If you have somebody who's applying, what is it we talk about when we talk about with kids? Peer pressure. Peer pressure. Do you guys feel peer pressure in your lives? From society or from your work environment to conform? Maybe that's just a thought question. Think about the ways that either society, the government, your employers, do they enforce you to adopt a certain belief system, lifestyle? Yes. All right. They may try. Hopefully they don't succeed. But sometimes there are consequences to not engaging in the same behaviors that others are behaving. They try to intimidate you. In some big ways, small ways. I love this passage in Peter, 1 Peter 4, verses 1 through 4. Therefore, since Christ suffered in the flesh, you yourselves also with the same understanding. Because the one who suffers in the flesh is finished with sin, in order to live the remaining time in the flesh, no longer for human desires, but for God's will. For there has already been enough time spent in doing what the Gentiles choose to do, carrying on an unrestrained behavior, evil desires, drunkenness, orgies, carousing, lawless idolatry. It covers quite a few things. They are surprised that you don't join them in the same flood of wild living, and they slander. If you read through the book of 1 Peter, apparently there's a lot of that going on in the book of 1 Peter. Not so much the outright, we're going to kill you type of thing that we do read about in the Roman Empire. But what was going on apparently with Peter's group was just this, the intimidations. And you got to choose the right thing here, or you name the particular thing that you have to endure because you decide not to engage in that same behavior. So, tell me some of the things in your life that makes moral decisions difficult.
Going to work.
Going to work. You don't have to worry about that anymore, do you?
Well, not anymore.
Not anymore. Is that a difficult moral decision, Jack, or you just, I don't feel like getting up and going today?
Well, some of the things in a lot of companies, especially large corporations, call on you to endorse or condone sinful lifestyles.
Yeah, they do.
And when we travel with work, this might be more your first question you ask. They would put pressure on you when you want to go out to eat or drink or wherever they was going, and you said, no, I'm not going there.
Yeah.
And they would put the pressure on.
Yeah, for sure. A friend of mine in New Jersey, I can't remember who he worked for, but he would travel occasionally, and they would want to all go out to the clubs. And he said, you know, there was apparently a minor league baseball stadium right nearby, so I'm going to go to the game. And after a while, they all said, yeah, okay, we ought to all do that too. Like, somebody had to lead the way,
Yeah.
but that doesn't always work. Sometimes they don't allow you to lead the way, they just give you a hard time for not participating with it. Others, you guys ever, what other struggles might you have with making moral decisions? Yeah.
When you have a non-Christian husband or wife.
Okay. Okay. That can be pressure, can it?
Yeah, they tend to do things that not necessarily in the same direction as a Christian person would go.
Yep. I'm guessing most of us have some family members, even if it's not in our immediate family, that it's that kind of situation, isn't it? They always make the same kind of choices that we would like them to make, and they want us to make the same choices, or at least we feel a little bit out of step with them. You know, that can just make you feel out of step, can't it? So David has several dilemmas he's got to deal with here. We've already dealt with one to some degree. One of them was somewhat easy, though I think it was against the conventional wisdom of the day. He seemed to make that, he had to make that several times, and that was, should I kill Saul? I had the opportunity to kill Saul, should I do it? Pressure was put on him by his own men to, you know, take him out, and David takes care of that one pretty easily. There are a couple of other ones here that I consider, to me, they're still a little bit mysterious as to the decisions he makes here. We'll get to those in just a minute, but there's still some dilemmas he has to solve. He has to figure out, what am I going to do here? All right, and so he has to make some very, very difficult choices too. Let's go to 1 Samuel, shall we, and go through the text, the storyline. Very interesting way I think this one starts. Might be some food for thought here. In 1 Samuel chapter 25, what's the first thing that happens in 1 Samuel 25? Samuel dies. You know, we talk about God's timing. I'm not sure about God's timing here. If there's a point, and the narrator doesn't spend a lot of time with this, does he? Samuel died, all Israel mourned for him. That's it. How do you think David felt about this? How do you think he felt about the loss of Samuel?
That was his strength, so he had to be feeling really lost.
Could he get to the funeral? No, he couldn't even get to the funeral. So it kind of places him in a little bit of a difficult spot. I'm sure he felt the effects of not having this man that originally anointed him and had been a leader in Israel, and had sort of turned the reins over to Saul and to him at some point. But now that leader is gone. That man that he looked to for guidance is gone. Interesting. You know, I don't know why the writer doesn't spend a little more time on that kind of thing. That's up for us to kind of, I suppose, sit and think about how David would have reacted to that. But then he goes into this story about Nabal and Abigail. Why do you think the writer includes this? Does this narrative seem like it fits within the whole story here? What is it about this narrative? I keep trying to decide why the writer puts this particular incident in there, other than to say, it's how I got his second wife. Actually, third wife by this time. So, why is this story in there? Let's talk about, okay, yeah, go ahead.
I think one of the things would be, again, to show David's faith in God.
Okay.
I mean, he first of all started to kill him because of what he'd done, because he had done something that was totally out of custom. If you took care of sheep or protected that, then it was custom for you to feed the men who had done that.
Yeah, I think that's probably, yeah.
And so he first of all did it, but once Abigail came to him and talked to him, he realized this was not the way he should react.
Okay.
And once again, he reacts in the way that God would have him react.
Yeah, thanks to Abigail.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Thanks to a very intelligent woman who comes and helps him figure it out.
Right.
Yeah.
You know, this follows right after Samuel's death. And I was looking at it from the viewpoint of David had no way to express his grief. And in my instance, I would want to lash out at something or somebody. And what's his name? Nabal was convenient.
Yeah. I hadn't thought about that.
He was convenient, and David had done something for him, and
So you think David's request in verse 8 is justifiable? Give us some food.
yeah.
Most of us think that was a justifiable request. Seemed a little unusual to me. Nabal didn't ask him to protect him. And yet David goes and he says, maybe it was just a custom. It's questionable here. The fact is, David seems to think it was pretty reasonable to expect that Nabal was going to provide for him when he had provided for him, provided protection for the sheep and so forth. Was his response justifiable? Verse 22. May God punish me and do so severely if I let any of his males survive until morning. Was that justifiable? Huh. Is that the way a king is supposed to react? Doesn't seem very regal here at this point, does it? David's been on the run. Can we excuse him emotionally because he's under stress? He just saw the loss of his mentor, one of his mentors. Yeah, we can debate that issue, I suppose.
It's human.
He does something that's very human here. He reacts very strongly here, doesn't he? I'm going to kill all those guys for what they're doing to me. I like Abigail's intervention. Let's spend a few minutes talking about this. I think Abigail's intervention may in fact be the key here to us understanding why the narrator puts this in. Okay. So let's start, if someone would read please, verses 23, let's go 23 to 28. Someone would read that, please. This is Abigail now. She finally she realized something's happened here. So she's going to take matters into her own. She acts very decisively here, doesn't she? She doesn't sit around and go, oh, what do I do now? She knows what she has to do, and she does it rapidly. She makes a very, very quick and decisive movement in this story. So someone read that for us. Verses 23, it's chapter 25, 23 to 28.
When Abigail saw David, she hurried and got down from the donkey and fell before David on her face and bowed to the ground. She fell at his feet and said, on me alone, my lord, be the guilt. Please let your servant speak in your ears and hear the words of your servant. Let not my lord regard this worthless fellow, Nabal, for as his name is, so is he. By the way, Nabal means fool. Nabal is his name, and folly is with him. But I, your servant, did not see the young men of my lord whom you sent. Now then, my lord, as the Lord lives and as your soul lives, because the Lord has restrained you from blood guilt and from saving with your own hand, now then let your enemies and those who seek to do evil to you, my lord, be as Nabal. And now let this present that your servant has brought to my lord be given to the young men who follow my lord. Please forgive the trespass of your servant, for the Lord will certainly make my Lord a sure house, because my Lord is fighting the battles of the Lord, and evil shall not be found in you so long as you live.
First of all, one of the things I find humorous about this story, do you ever see the, I don't know, you see him on some sort of website, even sometimes in a magazine, she's with him type of thing? This is one of those, she's with him? You know, how did he ever land her? She's intelligent, she's beautiful, and he's a moron, basically. I don't know what he looked like, but somewhere along the line, I don't know whether she was attractive, whether it was an arranged marriage, but it's like, is she with him? She was. Okay.
You described my whole life.
I'm sorry?
You did describe my whole life.
I didn't say that. I didn't intend to do that. But you're with her. Pretty cool. All right. Anyway.
Way to go.
So what's the first thing she says to David?
It's my fault.
Okay, it's my fault. What else? What did she say about Nabal?
Pay no attention.
Huh? Pay no attention to him. I heard it said, consider the source. She's telling David, consider the source here. This is not a man who is accustomed to doing things wisely. All right? He's an idiot. I mean, that's pretty much what she says. My husband is an idiot. Apparently she knows it. Anyway. It was my fault. I never knew you had come. Verse 25. What else does she say? What's a part of her message to him?
Please forgive him.
All right, forgive him.
He says, let the Lord hold you from shedding blood.
Yeah, she brings in the Lord here, doesn't she? She brings in some divine intervention, which David should understand. Okay. One of the background things here, I don't know if we want to call it the backstory. How much do people know about David running from Saul? I'm guessing they had to know. I'm guessing rumors, floated around. Where's David now? Has Saul found him? He's running. We thought he was going to be the next king. Seems like that should be the case. So there's all kinds of rumors running around. I'm sure people talked. So I'm guessing she knows who David is. Just a guess. She obviously comes to him and she says some things about him being, successful. So she knows a little bit about who he is. Nabal doesn't want to pay attention to that. Okay? So what else does she do here?
Presents him as a present. Presents him with a present.
She gives him what he had originally wanted. She gives him a gift. Who said something over here? I couldn't hear what she said. Yeah, she provides for them. She gives him what she knew he'd asked for to begin with. She brings it all with her. Okay. And David sees all that and he goes, well, okay, that's better. I feel a little better. She asks for forgiveness. Here is a gift. Somebody read now verses 29 through 31.
Even though someone is pursuing you to take your life, the life of my master will be bound securely in the bundle of the living by the Lord your God. But the lives of your enemies he will hurl away as from the pocket of a sling. When the Lord has done for my master every good thing he promised concerning him, and has appointed him leader over Israel, my master will not have on his conscience the staggering burden of needless bloodshed, or of having avenged himself. And when the Lord has brought my master success, remember your servant.
Interesting. I like the way yours express it. You won't have on your conscience the staggering burden of, did it say bloodshed or needless bloodshed?
Needless.
Needless bloodshed. Okay. David's already got a lot of bloodshed on his hands. So, yeah, I tend to think this provides the reason for the story.
She's actually expressing a New Testament concept that in a way, let God avenge you.
Okay.
Vengeance is mine.
Saith the Lord. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. David's already been doing that with Saul, hasn't he? He's already made that decision. Suddenly, he's making a snap decision here where he's not doing that. And fortunately, God provides someone in his life. Beautiful, intelligent woman comes to him and says, "You can't do this." And she pacifies him. She makes some very smart statements to him. She gives him the gifts that he had asked for. She tells her, "It was my own fault. I didn't know you had come. We'll make up for it." So she prevents him from doing something that could have been, I think, a grist for the political discussion later on after Saul was finally gone. Now, David's already got enough. In fact, he's got some more things he's going to end up doing here that might create more of a stir. Okay? He's going to make some decisions on some things a little bit in the next couple of chapters that he has to be concerned about. I think her speech is the crux of the story. Yeah, Don.
Yeah, I think God presents those same people in our lives, or when we read in the Bible, or something pops up when we're about to do something we know we shouldn't do.
Yeah.
And somebody says something to us, or we read something, or we hear something biblical, and then it's up to us to decide if we're going to keep down that path, or we're going to allow those words to change our minds to go towards God.
That's a good point. You know, we'd like to hope God provides those people for us. Presumably, some people in this room, you know, who are friends with us, or at least acquaintances enough to say, you know, let's talk about what's going on here. Or maybe you even go to somebody when you have a dilemma. I'm not sure what to do here. They may not be able to even solve it for you, but maybe just getting it out and looking at it makes a difference. Gives you some idea. Yeah, that kind of clarifies what my choice is going to be. Let's not ever forget, these are choices. You have to make choices. Whatever your feelings are about a certain thing, it's still a choice you make. Okay, and that's kind of important. Yeah, Larry.
Well, whenever David even approaches this wealthy man who's shearing sheep, the 10 men that he sends, he says, "In my name," tell him that's in my name, "good health to you and your household and all that you have." I mean, his intent was honorable from the beginning.
Yeah. But he was dealing with basically a not so honorable man.
Yeah.
Rather unreasonable man here. Okay. So the story goes that Nabal eventually dies rather rapidly, and Abigail becomes David's wife rather rapidly. You know, there's no chance for okay, let's plan a big wedding reception here. She just comes, that's it. And well, that's just another reflection of culture back then that seems a little strange to us, but the fact is that's what ended up happening. And if nothing else, David saw in her something that was really special, didn't he? Not only was she beautiful, she was very intelligent. She saved him. She saved him, basically. Okay, let's go to 1 Samuel 26. Again, we're going through a lot of material here, so I don't have time to read all of it. What's the story in chapter 26? What happens here? One of David's dilemmas. What is it? He's got another chance to take out his enemy. And he goes into the camp. Who's he with? A guy named Abishai. All right, one of his top officers, I think. Actually, he was the brother of the commander of his troops. Later on, I don't know if Joab was with him at this point, but Abishai's with him. So Abishai says, "I can take care of this guy in a hurry." Now think about where they are. They have walked into Saul's encampment. Saul's in the very center of the encampment, surrounded by how many men?
3,000.
3,000. Put the king in the middle because he's the guy you do not want to get killed. You put all your guards out in the fringe. You put everybody else coming in slowly. Is it Joab? No, Abner. Abner's his commander. And Abner's there, and Abner has fallen asleep. Everybody has fallen asleep on guard duty. Mike, what happens to somebody in the military who falls asleep on guard duty?
You could be facing the court martial.
That's pretty serious, pretty serious offense. David kind of waltzes into the camp. Oh, doesn't waltz in, but he goes into the camp unharmed, undetected. Gets right up to Saul, takes his spear and his water jug and walks out. Abishai wants to kill him. David has already made this decision before. So this was kind of an easy, I'm calling it a dilemma. It wasn't at this point quite a dilemma for Saul, or David, because he already knew what the answer was going to be, didn't he? It was an easy answer to make. This was a black and white choice. I can't kill God's anointed. That's it. I don't care what everybody else says. I don't care what conventional wisdom is. I can't do that because I know God does not want me to do that.
He says something interesting too. He says, the Lord himself will strike him.
Yeah.
Either time will come, then he'll die, or go into battle and perish. God will deal with him. I don't know how much time had elapsed between the story of Nabal and now, but he did witness in that previous chapter, he witnessed God dealing with this person in just such a way. He saw firsthand God deal with his enemy.
Yeah.
And it's the same thing here. God will deal with Saul.
Yeah, that's true. He didn't just see it, didn't he? And saw it. God took care of Nabal pretty rapidly. So, not too much of a problem here, is it? David's hiding place is revealed. It looks to me like assassinations and coups was sort of the standard to change administration. Well, I don't know if I want to say it quite that way. It was not uncommon, let's put it that way. Assassinations and coups was one of the ways that you change the administration in monarchical governments. Or you obviously pass it on to your children. That's one of the other ways it happens. Not uncommon. In fact, there's a section in 1 Kings or 2 Kings, a time very quickly, just prior to the Assyrian captivity. Within a period of about 3 or 4 years, there's like 5 different kings, and you're just whacking each other off. And this is Israel and the 10 tribes in the north by that point. So it gets pretty brutal. Let's talk about David's speech here, because I think David's speech indicates how he resolves the dilemma for himself of should I get rid of Saul or not. Well, again, this was an easy one, wasn't it? This was black and white. There was no wiggle room in this. Don't kill God's anointed. It doesn't say don't kill God's anointed if he's worthy of not being killed. It says don't kill him. So David takes it that way. Let's start in verse 18. David has already called out to Abner in verses 15 and following, and he's waking everybody up here. They're all asleep. He's waking them up. So he says, let's see, somebody please start verses 17 through 20.
Saul recognized David's voice and said, "Is that your voice, David, my son?" David replied, "Yes, it is, my lord the king." And he added, "Why is my lord pursuing his servant? What have I done, and what wrong am I guilty of? Now let my lord the king listen to his servant's words. If the Lord has incited you against me, then he may accept an offering. If, however, men have done it, may they be cursed before the Lord. They have now driven me from my share in the Lord's inheritance and said, 'Go, serve other gods.' Now do not let my blood fall to the ground far from the presence of the Lord. The Lord, or the King of Israel, has come out to look for a flea, as one hunts a partridge in the mountains."
Okay, so what is David's defense? I haven't done anything wrong. Yeah, what's my crime here? What's my crime? In the law, in the Old Law, in the Old Testament law, one of the things that was important was they had cities of refuge, where if a person killed somebody else, they could flee to the city of refuge before revenge could take place, before somebody could take matters into their own hands. What had to happen in that city of refuge? They bring in the witnesses, if there were some, and they try to discover what happened. Okay? Basically, the person is innocent until proven guilty. Rather than what we have today, where a person is shown to be guilty by the media. We're convicted by the media. We don't give them a chance to confront their accusers. They're already guilty. I mean, it's happened over and over again today, isn't it? So David says, what is my crime? Saul doesn't have an answer for that. I think he knows it. So he goes on to talk about if the Lord has incited you, the Lord will accept an offering. If people have incited you, what does he say about them? Let them be cursed. They're making a big mistake here because I really haven't done anything wrong. That's what David's message is, isn't it? I haven't done anything wrong here. How does David feel? What does he compare himself to? You're swatting at me like a flea. You've reduced me to an insect. Or like I'm a bird that's being hunted. We've got a number of hunters in here, I'm like something that's being hunted. Do you really want to reduce me to that? Okay. Now, by the way, this is David's second defense to Saul, isn't it? The last time he could have killed him, he makes some very similar statements. What have I done? What am I, a flea? What am I, just something to be hunted? I haven't really done anything wrong. So David is acting as his own kind of defense lawyer here. Okay? So Saul answers him. This is kind of interesting to me. This is the second time Saul gives the same response as he did before. Somebody just read Saul's response, verse 21.
Then Saul said, I have sinned. Come back, David, my son. Because you considered my life precious today, I will not try to harm you again. Surely I have acted like a fool and have erred greatly.
Do you believe Saul? Does David believe Saul? Does Saul believe Saul?
I think he does.
I think he does too. I think he does too. In the moment. Later on, it becomes very clear in chapter 27, David knows, now, this has happened before. He said everything was okay, come back, and then he goes and he hunts him again. David knows it's still going to happen. There's something about Saul's personality here that, at least in the moment, man, the guy saved my life. Which, appeals to anybody, whose life has been threatened. He's been saved. He's been spared. And he knows it. And he even admits here that in verse 25, you will certainly do great things and will also prevail. In his more lucid moments, Saul is willing to admit that. Something else happens to him along the way. Yeah.
I was about to mention that same thing we talked about last week, that even though he was overcome with this evil spirit, he did have these occasional moments of clarity where he would speak the truth and seem to be more humble about this situation with relation to David, but then he would be overcome again with the evil spirit.
Yeah, it was, I don't know if that's a classic look at a person who's addicted to something. But it kind of happens that way, doesn't it? In the moment, oh man, I'll quit tomorrow. I can quit today. That just never happens. Yeah, not.
It's a classic abusive relationship. They're abusive, and then they're nice and kind, and you stick around, and then they show themselves again. That abuse.
Yeah. Somewhere along the line, the cycle doesn't get broken. Yeah, it just keeps going back. Okay. That's another whole, I mean, there's probably a whole book that could be written about Saul's personality. Yeah, back here.
You know, if you want to translate that to modern day analysis, right? 2019, we say Saul was suffering from bipolar disorder.
Okay.
That actually was happening. Right? So
Yeah.
he's just giving one time and then it's really nuts. But yet, the scripture tells us that the evil spirit from the Lord.
Yeah.
So the
Yeah.
Lord allowed that evil spirit to work its. I struggle with that because, you know, from a people standpoint, right, I believe that Saul was just said no.
Yeah, but something about his personality just made it hard. Yeah. The evil spirit, whatever it is, something made it really hard. Yeah.
It's gentle words that he spoke to Saul, I think, were respected. And this verse in Psalm of Proverbs that talks about gentle words or honey, all rather than he could have been harsh with them.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, well, Jen, you have this Proverbs 15 or 16, a harsh word stirs up anger. No, a soft word turns away anger, but
A gentle word.
yeah, gentle. I don't remember what he said. Yeah, you get the idea. I can't remember the exact statement now, but it's always something I've thought about. Yeah, anyway. Harsh word stirs up anger, something like that. A gentle word can break a bone. But there's all kinds of neat things in Proverbs. It's in the book of Proverbs, not that much. Okay. So David has got that here, okay? So as we move on, David mentions here verses 22 through 24. He gives more of his own defense. He declares his own righteousness here. All right. Now, I don't think this is braggadocious. David is just simply stating something that's a fact. He has not harmed Saul. And from that standpoint, he can say, I've done the right thing. I haven't done anything. I have done the right thing here. My righteousness is that I've done the right thing toward you. Okay. So this dilemma, if it can be called that, where David has to choose between listening to his men and listening to God, that's easy. It's an easy choice for David to, well, I say easy. It was clear. Let's put it that way. It was a clear choice to make. How much pressure the men put on him, I can only imagine. Or what they felt about that choice, I can only imagine. But when we get to chapter 27, David has actually, I think, two dilemmas here that he has to resolve. What's the first one? He knows Saul is going to keep looking for him. He has to make a choice here between two things. What are they?
Well, one is I can continue to live in the territory of Saul, or be pursued by Saul, or I can go live in the territory of the Philistines.
What kind of a choice is that? This is one of the unknowns about this part of the narrative too. How does he have a relationship with the king? Was it Achash? King of Gath. This is a weird choice, isn't it? For a guy who's going to be the king. I'm going to go live among our enemies.
But he knew it was coming. Part of the deal, when he's talking to Saul, is he says, you've driven me from my inheritance.
Yeah.
So he knew it was coming.
Okay. How would David's enemies later on feel about that when he was set to be the king? I don't know. This just doesn't look good to me. Guy's going off and living with his enemies. But he's got an enemy here. This enemy happens to be running the show. Then he's got these enemies over here who are sworn enemies of Israel. My suspicion is that the king of Gath here probably knows what's going on. He's probably heard all the rumors. So for David to come on over, he's like, yeah, this guy, I already know he's sort of a traitor in the making. kind of thing. So he goes over to him. And the king accepts him pretty readily. But then he has another choice he has to make, and this one really, really gets to me. How does he make his living?
Reading.
He becomes a bandit. He becomes basically a thug. Is there any other way to say it? He goes and he kills people and he steals everything from them. I don't know. Huh. That's pretty desperate, isn't it?
This is a tough one morally, too, because his reason, and it's important, the motivation of why we do things is an important part of what we do. His motivation is pretty unrighteous. I'm going to kill every one of them, let none survive. Why? So there's nobody left to tell on me. Nobody left to tell that I'm deceiving the king of the Philistines.
Yeah.
It's a poor motive.
Yeah, Roger.
It's interesting though that one of the tribes that David has been preyed upon were the Amalekites.
Yeah.
Now, Saul already had some experience with the Amalekites and some instruction from God, which he didn't obey, and which was big reason for the kingdom being taken from him.
Yeah.
He was supposed to kill them all.
Yeah.
These were not. These have been enemies of Israel since they came out of Egypt.
For a long time, yeah.
And it seemed like
kind of seems okay for them. Yeah. Does anybody here want to defend David's actions here?
Yes.
Yes. All right, Ron, tell me why you want to defend his actions.
Well, I'm not that familiar with these nationalities that are named here, but didn't God say clear the land, clear the land? And could he be thinking, as long as I'm here, I can do what God originally commanded Israel to do?
Okay. Does anybody think Ron's reasoning is a stretch? Yeah, Larry.
And again, I'm trying to put together the story, but didn't David go and steal the technology from the Philistines about iron?
Say that again now.
Didn't David at some point in time, and I'm trying to remember my story and the sequences, wasn't it the Philistines that had the iron technology?
They were the.
And David went down at some point in time and learned that, or somehow or another took that technology back to.
Yeah, I don't know about that. That's a good question.
I'll have to look it up to find it too.
Okay. All right. To tell you honestly, I don't know how I can defend David here, other than to simply say he's in a very desperate time. Could God have helped him survive a different way? Maybe. Is he surviving this way? Yes. Is he going to end up being the new king? Yes, we already know the result of the story. But this is to me, there's several ways we do make decisions. We make decisions based on what are very clear moral choices, don't we? Then as we move a little bit further away from things that are very easy to figure out, we get to the ones that maybe aren't so easy to figure out. Those become dilemmas for us. Now, most of the time, we're not over in this area. Most of the time, I would guess, our decisions are right here, or maybe a little bit further over toward those ones that are dilemmas. Maybe because we're threatened, maybe because we feel intimidated. We end up having to make choices based on what's right and wrong, not what society is saying. So, the only thing I can come up with here is David survived. Is it the way I would recommend anybody survive? No. But it's the story. So what can you say here? I mean, I don't know, Ron, maybe you're right. Somewhere along the line, David came out of it okay. But we're still not through with what David's going to experience here, because there's really another interesting sort of episode at the end of this where David is in still really a difficult situation. And I don't know how he allows himself to get into this situation, but he does. Okay, so next week we look at Saul and the witch of Endor, and Saul's final moments. And then I think it's, did I do it that way? Let's remember it. Oh no, David, yeah, we go to David very next, and you'll finish up. And then we look at Saul. Okay? So next week we look at David's dark night, the other dilemma that he ends up facing. He's put himself in this position, but it's still a difficult thing he's got to deal with. He's very fortunate here in some ways. Okay. Questions, comments? Yeah, one last comment here. Yeah. Helps us know that David's human. Yeah. He's making some very difficult choices here. All right. Hope your choices aren't quite as difficult as David's. Thank you.
Both roads are the same deal. Maybe the thermostat is not, because it'll go back just to circulate the air for, yeah, if you're sitting back here in the summertime, I have to check that out. I don't know. Maybe the thermostat, this is tied to the same.
I know, we covered something, we have to take care of this. We're covering that thing.
Yeah, we can do that.
No, I mean, I just take something.
Interesting comment.
A book or something.
You were the only one willing to